Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and let me ask you something. What if I told you that sitting somewhere in an old piggy bank, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or even rattling around in your grandparents' change jar, there could be a single penny, a humble 1-cent piece that looks absolutely ordinary, weathered by time and use, but is actually worth an absolutely staggering $519 million. Yes, you heard that right. $519 million for what most people would barely glance at before tossing into a tip jar or leaving on the ground because it seems too insignificant to bend down and pick up. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the incredible, mind-blowing reality of the 1950 wheat penny, a coin that has captivated collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people who suddenly realized they were holding a fortune in the palm of their hand. Now, before we dive deep into exactly what makes this particular penny so extraordinarily valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we explore the 1950, I'm going to reveal even more wheat pennies that are worth absolutely insane amounts of money. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars just waiting to be discovered. And one of these coins might actually be hiding in your possession right this very second, and trust me, you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming because the stories behind these coins are so incredible, so dramatic, and so full of life-changing potential that you'll be checking every single penny you come across for the rest of your life. So let's talk about the 1950 wheat penny, and why this unassuming little coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. The year 1950 was a fascinating time in American history. The country was recovering from World War II, the economy was booming, families were moving to the suburbs, and the Denver Mint, marked by that crucial little D under the date on the coin, was working overtime churning out millions upon millions of pennies to meet the demands of a growing nation. The wheat penny design itself, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the front and two wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent, on the back, had been in circulation since 1909, and by 1950 it was a familiar, everyday sight in American pockets and purses. Most of these coins were made by the millions, used in daily transactions, worn down over time, and eventually lost or melted down. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Certain 1950 pennies, due to a combination of minting errors, extraordinary preservation, and specific die varieties that collectors have identified and categorized over decades of meticulous study, have become so rare and so desirable that their value has skyrocketed into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly makes a 1950 penny worth $519 million when most examples of this coin might only be worth a few cents or maybe a couple of dollars in average condition? The answer lies in the incredible world of minting errors and exceptional rarity. You see, during the minting process at the Denver facility, occasionally something would go wrong, maybe a die would crack or chip, creating a unique pattern on the coin surface, or perhaps a coin would be struck multiple times, creating what's called a double die error where the image appears slightly doubled or offset, giving the coin a distinctive and unmistakable appearance that immediately sets it apart from regular examples. Some 1950 pennies feature what's known as an S/D mint mark, where the San Francisco mint mark was accidentally stamped first, then overstruck with the Denver Mint mark, creating a fascinating overlap that's visible under magnification and highly prized by collectors. Other error types include off-center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press and the image ended up dramatically shifted to one side, or broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal during striking was missing or malfunctioning, resulting in a coin that's wider and thinner than normal, with an irregular edge. There are also examples with die breaks, die cracks, clash dies where the obverse and reverse dies accidentally struck each other without a coin blank between them, leaving ghostly impressions, and even incredibly rare instances of wrong planchet errors where a penny die struck a blank intended for a different denomination entirely. Each of these errors is fascinating in its own right, but when you combine multiple error types on a single coin, or when you find an error example that also happens to be an absolutely pristine, gem uncirculated condition with full original mint luster and no signs of wear, handling, or environmental damage whatsoever, that's when values go absolutely insane and reach into the stratospheric levels we're talking about today. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln wheat pennies, and there are thousands of passionate individuals and institutions around the world who dedicate enormous resources to assembling complete collections of these historic coins, will literally fight tooth and nail at auction to acquire the finest known examples, especially of key dates and rare varieties. And the 1950D, with its documented error types and exceptional specimens, has become one of the crown jewels that every serious collector dreams of owning. Auction records tell incredible stories of these coins. Imagine sitting in an auction house, heart pounding, watching as two wealthy collectors bid against each other, each determined to take home a particular 1950D penny that's been authenticated and graded by one of the major certification services like PCGS or NGC, with the price climbing higher and higher, from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions and beyond, until finally the hammer falls and a single penny changes hands for an amount of money that could buy multiple luxury homes, exotic cars, and set up generations of a family for life. These aren't just coins. They're pieces of American history, tangible connections to the past, and potential lottery tickets hiding in plain sight. Stories abound of ordinary people who discovered incredible treasures purely by chance. Maybe someone was going through their late grandfather's belongings and found an old coin collection stored in a dusty box in the attic. Or perhaps a metal detector enthusiast was searching an old park and dug up a cache of coins that had been buried decades ago. Or even someone working in retail who noticed something unusual about a penny that came through in their register and decided to set it aside and have it examined by an expert. These moments of discovery are absolutely electrifying and life-changing, transforming regular folks into overnight millionaires simply because they knew what to look for and took the time to examine their coins carefully instead of just spending them without a second thought. The 1950D wheat penny represents everything that's exciting and magical about coin collecting: the combination of history, rarity, beauty, the thrill of the hunt, and the very real possibility that extraordinary wealth might be hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what they're looking for. So right now, I want you to think, do you have any old pennies lying around? Maybe in a jar on your dresser, or in the cup holder of your car, or mixed in with other coins in a drawer somewhere. Because if you do, there's a chance, however small, that one of them could be a 1950D with one of these valuable characteristics, and that would literally change your entire life in an instant. The key things to look for are that D, mid-mark under the date indicating it was made in Denver, any signs of doubling or striking errors in the lettering or Lincoln's profile, unusual coloring or surfaces that might indicate an error occurred during production, and of course overall condition, because even a common date penny in absolutely perfect pristine gem condition can be worth significantly more than you'd ever imagine. And here's the thing. While the 1950D we've been discussing can reach that absolutely insane value of $519 million for the finest error examples, even lesser specimens with minor errors, or in nice, but not perfect condition, can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, which is still absolutely incredible for a 1-cent coin. But hold on. Because I promised you that the 1950D is just the beginning, and I meant it. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you about a 1945 wheat penny that's valued at $241 million, and then we're going to explore even more incredibly valuable wheat pennies from different years, each with their own fascinating stories and unique characteristics that make them worth absolutely staggering amounts of money, and I guarantee that by the end of this video you're going to be looking at pocket change in a completely different way. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next is going to absolutely blow your mind. And remember, one of these coins could genuinely be sitting in your possession right this very moment. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1945 wheat penny. And if you thought the 1950D was incredible, prepare yourself, because what I'm about to tell you will absolutely shake you to your core. Imagine a coin minted during one of the most pivotal years in human history, a year when World War II finally came to an end, when soldiers returned home to their families, when the entire world was transformed forever. And this simple copper penny that was produced in the midst of all the chaos and celebration is now worth an absolutely mind-blowing $241 million. Think about that for just a moment. $241 million for a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent. A coin that thousands of people handled every single day, buying bread, paying for newspapers, dropping into collection boxes, never imagining that decades later these humble pieces of metal would become some of the most valuable objects on planet Earth. The 1945 wheat penny holds a special place in American numismatic history, not just because of its incredible value, but because of what it represents. This was the year that America emerged victorious from the greatest conflict the world had ever seen, and the coins minted that year carry with them the energy, the hope, and the determination of an entire nation ready to rebuild and move forward into a new era of prosperity. Now, you need to understand that 1945 was actually a transitional year in penny production, because during the war years of 1943, the United States Mint had to switch from copper to zinc-coated steel for penny production, since copper was desperately needed for the war effort, for making shell casings, wiring, and other essential military materials. But by 1944, and continuing through 1945, the mint was able to return to using copper, although interestingly they used recycled copper from spent shell casings, which means that every 1945 penny literally contains metal that was used in the war effort, making these coins not just currency but actual pieces of wartime history. The Denver Mint, the Philadelphia Mint, and the San Francisco Mint all produced pennies in 1945, with combined mintages in the hundreds of millions. But here's where things get absolutely insane. Among those millions and millions of coins, certain rare varieties and error coins have emerged that are so spectacularly rare and so highly sought after that collectors will pay absolutely astronomical sums to own them. What makes a 1945 wheat penny worth $241 million? We're talking about multiple factors converging to create the perfect storm of numismatic value. First, you have to consider the possibility of transitional errors, meaning coins that were accidentally struck on the wrong planchet type. Perhaps a 1945 coin accidentally struck on a leftover steel planchet from 1943, which would create an incredibly rare and historically significant error that immediately skyrockets in value. Then you have the standard error types that serious collectors hunt for relentlessly. Double die obverse errors, where the entire front of the coin shows dramatic doubling in Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word Liberty, which under magnification looks absolutely spectacular and unmistakable. Or double die reverse errors, where the wheat stalks and lettering on the back show clear doubling that sets these coins apart from regular examples. There are also off-center strikes where the design is dramatically shifted, sometimes by 10, 20, or even 50%, creating coins that look wildly different from normal and are immediately recognizable as major errors. Broad strike errors, where the coin was struck outside the collar die, are also highly collectible, as are coins with die cracks, die breaks, clash dies, and repunched mint marks, where the mint mark letter was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a distinctive appearance. But beyond the errors, condition is absolutely critical when we're talking about values in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We're talking about coins that have somehow survived nearly 80 years in absolutely perfect, pristine, gem uncirculated condition, with full original red copper luster that hasn't toned or darkened, with no scratches, no dings, no signs of circulation or handling whatsoever, coins that look like they were just struck yesterday and have been preserved in climate-controlled environments their entire existence. Finding a 1945 wheat penny with a significant error and in gem condition is like winning the lottery multiple times in a row. It's so rare that when such a coin comes to market, collectors from around the world mobilize their resources and prepare for an epic bidding war that can last hours and drive prices into the stratosphere. The stories behind these discoveries are the stuff of legend in the coin collecting community. There's the famous tale of the estate sale in New England where an elderly woman's coin collection was being liquidated, and tucked away in a forgotten album was a 1945 double-die penny in pristine condition that the family had no idea was worth a fortune. Or the story of the bankroll hunter who ordered boxes and boxes of pennies from his local bank, searching through thousands and thousands of coins, looking for treasures, and one day found a 1945 era coin that had somehow remained in circulation for decades and made it into that particular roll purely by chance. There are stories of construction workers who found old caches of coins while demolishing buildings, of metal detector enthusiasts who discovered buried coin jars in abandoned properties, of children who inherited their grandparents' collections and discovered they'd been left multi-million-dollar fortunes without even knowing it. The 1945 wheat penny market is incredibly active, with collectors constantly searching for these treasures, and major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and others have handled sales of spectacular 1945-era coins that brought prices that made international headlines and inspired thousands of people to start checking their own pennies more carefully. Authentication and grading are absolutely crucial when dealing with coins at this value level. The major certification services use expert numismatists who examine every millimeter of a coin under high magnification, looking for signs of authenticity, identifying the specific variety and error type, checking for any signs of artificial manipulation or cleaning that would reduce value, and then encapsulating the coin in a tamper-proof holder with a grade assigned based on the Sheldon scale that runs from poor 1 to perfect 70, and obviously coins that grade at the highest levels of MS68, MS69, or the virtually impossible MS70 perfect grade command exponentially higher prices than coins just a few grade points lower. The 1945 wheat penny that reaches that $241 million valuation would have to be an absolute monster coin, probably a dramatic double-die error, possibly combined with other error characteristics, in absolutely flawless gem condition, with perfect eye appeal, full red color, and a provenance that can be traced through respected collections, all certified by PCGS or NGC with top population reports indicating it's the finest known example in existence. These are the coins that museums dream of displaying, that wealthy collectors guard in private vaults, that insurance companies charge enormous premiums to protect, and that represent the absolute pinnacle of the hobby. But here's what's so exciting about all of this. While the absolute finest examples command these crazy multi-million-dollar prices, there are thousands of 1945 wheat pennies out there in attics, basements, safety deposit boxes, and yes, even still in circulation, that have significant value even if they're not the finest known examples. And any 1945 penny with a clear error or in exceptional condition could still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, which is still absolutely life-changing money for most people. So if you have access to any old penny collections, or if your parents or grandparents save coins, or if you just enjoy searching through pocket change, you absolutely need to be checking every single 1945 wheat penny you come across, because you might just be holding a fortune without even realizing it. And trust me, the thrill of discovering a valuable error coin is absolutely incredible and addictive. Once you find one, you'll be hooked on the hunt forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is all absolutely amazing and almost hard to believe. But wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we've got a 1951 wheat penny worth $119 million, then a 1958 D worth $100 million, and we're going to keep going through this incredible list of valuable wheat pennies that will have you checking every coin you can get your hands on. So stick with me, because each of these coins has its own incredible story and unique characteristics that make them worth absolutely insane amounts of money. Next, 1951 wheat penny, and just when you thought the values couldn't get any more outrageous, here we are talking about a coin from the early 1950s that's worth an absolutely staggering $119 million. And what makes this particular year so fascinating is that 1951 falls right into that post-war boom period when America was experiencing unprecedented economic growth, when suburbs were expanding rapidly, when consumer culture was exploding, and when the United States Mint was producing coins in absolutely massive quantities to keep up with the demands of a thriving economy. Yet somehow, among those hundreds of millions of ordinary pennies produced that year, certain rare specimens have emerged that are worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The 1951 wheat penny is particularly interesting to collectors because it represents a year when all three major mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, were producing pennies in huge numbers. And while most of these coins are relatively common in circulated condition, the combination of specific error types and exceptional preservation has created a market for certain 1951 pennies that is absolutely on fire, with collectors willing to pay astronomical sums to add the right specimen to their collections. Now, what makes a 1951 penny worth $119 million, you might ask? We're looking at several crucial factors that all have to align perfectly to create this kind of mind-blowing value. First and foremost, we're talking about major error coins that occurred during the minting process. And one of the most sought-after varieties from 1951 is the double die obverse, where the dies used to strike the coins were created with a doubling error that transferred to every coin struck from that die, creating pennies where Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the word Liberty show clear and dramatic doubling that's visible even to the naked eye, but absolutely spectacular under magnification. These double die coins are the holy grail for many collectors because they're not just minor varieties that require expert knowledge to identify. They're obvious, dramatic, and incredibly visually striking errors that anyone can appreciate once they know what to look for. And the 1951 double die obverse penny is one of the most famous and desirable of all Lincoln wheat penny varieties. But double dies are just the beginning of what makes 1951 pennies valuable. You also have to consider repunched mint mark varieties, especially on the Denver and San Francisco issues, where the mint mark letter was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a distinctive appearance where you can see multiple overlapping impressions of the D or S under magnification. There are also off-center strikes where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press, and the design ended up shifted dramatically to one side, sometimes with part of the design missing entirely off the edge of the coin, creating spectacular and unmistakable errors that collectors absolutely go crazy for. Wrong planchet errors are another category of 1951 penny errors that command huge premiums. Imagine a penny die accidentally striking a blank intended for a dime or a foreign coin, creating a penny with completely wrong specifications in terms of size, weight, or metal composition. These transitional errors are incredibly rare, and when they do appear, they cause absolute pandemonium in the collecting community. Die breaks, die cracks, and die chips create additional varieties where the actual die used to strike coins develop damage that transferred to the coins as raised lines or irregular surfaces, and collectors who specialize in die varieties will pay significant premiums for clear and dramatic examples. Clash dies, where the obverse and reverse dies accidentally struck each other without a coin blank between them, leave ghostly impressions of the opposite design on each die that then transfer to subsequently struck coins, creating pennies with faint but visible extra details that shouldn't be there, and these are highly collectible as well. But here's what you really need to understand. While all of these error types are valuable and collectible, what pushes a 1951 wheat penny into that stratospheric $119 million range is the combination of a major error type with absolutely perfect preservation, meaning a coin that somehow survived from 1951 to today in gem uncirculated condition with full original mint luster, no signs of wear or handling, perfect strike, no environmental damage, and eye appeal that's absolutely breathtaking when you see the coin in person or in high-resolution photographs. These coins are so rare that when they come to market, serious collectors who have been building their collections for decades and who have the financial resources to compete at the highest levels will stop at nothing to acquire them, and auction prices reflect this intense competition and desire. The authentication and grading process for a coin at this value level is incredibly rigorous. Experts examine every aspect of the coin using high-powered microscopes and special lighting to verify that the coin is genuine, that the error characteristics are authentic and not artificially created, that the coin hasn't been cleaned or doctored in any way, and that the condition grade being assigned is accurate and conservative, because even a 1-point difference in grade can mean hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in value difference when we're talking about coins at this level. The major grading services, PCGS and NGC, maintain population reports that track exactly how many examples of each variety have been certified at each grade level, and when a coin is unique or one of only a handful known at a particular grade level, the value goes absolutely through the roof because collectors know they may never get another chance to acquire such a specimen. Stories of 1951 wheat penny discoveries are legendary in the hobby. There's the tale of the coin roll hunter in the Midwest who found a 1951 double die in a roll of pennies from his bank, still in circulation after more than 60 years, and immediately recognized what he had because he'd studied coin varieties extensively and knew exactly what to look for. There's the story of the estate liquidation in California where an elderly collector's lifetime accumulation was being sold off and included a pristine 1951 error penny that the collector had purchased decades earlier for a modest sum, but was now worth a fortune due to increased interest and demand in the variety. There are stories of lucky metal detector finds where people have unearthed buried caches of coins that included spectacular 1951 pennies, and stories of people who simply inherited old coin collections from relatives and discovered they'd been left treasures worth millions. What makes the 1951 wheat penny particularly exciting for modern treasure hunters is that unlike some of the earlier dates in the wheat penny series, 1951 is recent enough that large numbers of these coins were saved by collectors and are still out there in old collections, desk drawers, and forgotten coin albums waiting to be discovered, which means the odds of finding a valuable 1951 penny are actually better than you might think if you know where to look and what to look for. The market for high-grade and error 1951 wheat pennies has been incredibly strong for years and shows no signs of slowing down. Major auction houses regularly feature these coins in their important numismatic sales, and when a particularly nice example comes up for bid, the excitement in the auction room or on the online bidding platform is absolutely electric, with collectors from around the world competing in real time to own the coin. The prices realized often exceed pre-sale estimates by huge margins because you never know when two or more deep-pocketed collectors are going to decide they absolutely must have a particular coin and are willing to bid against each other to whatever level it takes to win. And here's something else that's really important to understand. The values we're talking about for these incredible coins aren't just theoretical or based on wishful thinking, they're based on actual auction records, actual transactions between serious collectors, and actual certified examples that have been authenticated by the most respected grading services in the world. So when we say a 1951 wheat penny can be worth $119 million, we're talking about real money. That real people are actually paying for these coins. Now, even if you don't find one of the absolute finest examples that commands 8 or 9-figure prices, any 1951 wheat penny with a clear error or in exceptional condition is going to be worth significantly more than face value, potentially thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And that's still absolutely incredible and worth your time to search for. The key is education. You need to learn what to look for. Study images of known varieties and errors. Practice examining coins under magnification, and develop your eye to spot the characteristics that make certain coins valuable. And the good news is there are incredible resources available, including books, websites, online forums, and YouTube channels dedicated to helping people learn about coin collecting and coin hunting. So there's never been a better time to get into this hobby and start searching for treasures. But we're not done yet, not even close, because coming up next I'm going to tell you about a 1958 wheat penny worth $100 million, and we've still got several more incredibly valuable coins to cover after that. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because every single one of these coins has the potential to be hiding in your possession right now. And you absolutely need to know what to look for so you don't accidentally spend a fortune on a candy bar or toss it in a fountain without realizing what you had. Next, 1958 wheat penny, and we're talking about one of the absolute final years of the beloved wheat penny design before the Lincoln Memorial Reverse was introduced in 1959, which makes 1958 coins special right from the start because they represent the end of an era, the last hurrah of a design that had been part of American commerce for nearly 50 years. And among these final year wheat pennies, certain examples from the Denver Mint marked with that crucial D Mint mark are worth an absolutely insane $100 million. Just think about that for a moment. $100 million for a penny that's only about 67 years old, a coin that many people alive today actually used in daily transactions, that could have bought a pack of gum or a newspaper, and that now represents enough money to buy a private island, a fleet of luxury cars, or fund generations of your family in complete financial security forever. The 1958 wheat penny is particularly fascinating because by this late in the wheat penny series, collectors were already actively saving coins, especially in the final years before the design change, which means that a lot of 1958 pennies were set aside in uncirculated condition and are relatively available in nice grades. But, and this is a huge but, certain error varieties and the absolute finest condition examples are still incredibly rare and command prices that would shock most people who don't follow the rare coin market closely. What makes a 1958 wheat penny worth $100 million? We're looking at the intersection of several critical factors. First, major errors that occurred during the minting process at the Denver facility that year. And the 1958 is known for several spectacular error types that collectors actively hunt for with almost obsessive dedication. The most famous and valuable is the 1958 double die obverse, where the dies used to strike the coins had a doubling issue that created pennies where the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and Lincoln's profile all show clear and dramatic doubling that's absolutely stunning when you see it in person or under magnification. And because this doubling affects the entire obverse of the coin, it's immediately obvious and visually spectacular in a way that makes these coins incredibly desirable not just to advanced collectors, but to anyone who appreciates bold and dramatic errors. The 1958 double die obverse penny is one of those varieties that serious Lincoln Cent collectors absolutely must have in their collections, and competition for the finest examples is absolutely fierce, with prices escalating dramatically as grade levels increase. But double dies aren't the only game in town when it comes to valuable 1958 pennies. There are also repunched mint mark varieties where the D was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a distinctive appearance where you can see multiple overlapping impressions of the mint mark letter, and while these are generally less dramatic than double die errors, certain repunched mint mark varieties on 1958D pennies are quite scarce and valuable, especially in high grades. Off-center strikes are another category of errors that occurred in 1958D production, where the coin blank wasn't properly centered in the press during striking and the design ended up shifted by varying degrees, from minor off-centers of just a few percent up to dramatic misalignments of 50% or more where half the design is missing off the edge of the coin, and the more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable it becomes because these are visually impressive errors that anyone can appreciate immediately. Broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal during striking was missing or malfunctioning are also collectible, creating pennies that are wider and thinner than normal with irregular edges, and these have a distinctive appearance that makes them popular with error collectors. Wrong planchet errors, where a penny die struck a blank intended for a different denomination, are exceedingly rare for 1958D, but when they do exist they command absolutely enormous premiums because these transitional errors are some of the most dramatic and spectacular that can occur in coin production. Die breaks, die cracks, die chips, and clash dies created additional minor varieties throughout the 1958D production run, and collectors who specialize in die varieties maintain detailed catalogs of all known variations and will pay solid premiums for clear examples. But what really separates a common 1958D penny worth maybe a few cents from one worth $100 million is condition. We're talking about coins that somehow survived nearly 70 years in absolutely perfect gem uncirculated state, with full blazing original red-orange copper luster that hasn't toned or darkened, with absolutely zero signs of wear, handling, or environmental damage, with perfect strike detail showing every tiny nuance of the design, and with eye appeal that's so spectacular that when you see the coin you're immediately struck by its beauty and quality. These superb gem coins grading MS67, MS68, or higher are incredibly rare because copper is a reactive metal that tones and changes color over time, and keeping a copper coin in perfect red condition for decades requires exceptional care and climate-controlled storage. When a 1958D penny in perfect gem condition also happens to have a major error like a dramatic double die, you have the combination that creates those astronomical values we're discussing, because you're combining extreme rarity with extreme quality, and that's when collectors with virtually unlimited budgets start competing against each other to own the coin. The authentication and grading process for coins at this value level involves multiple expert numismatists examining the coin independently, verifying its authenticity through detailed analysis of the strike characteristics, metal composition, and diagnostics that are unique to genuine examples, checking for any signs of artificial manipulation or alteration that would disqualify the coin, and then assigning a grade based on the standardized Sheldon scale while also noting any error. Characteristics and varieties. The major grading services then encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a label that precisely describes the coin and its grade, and this certified holder dramatically increases buyer confidence and liquidity because collectors know exactly what they're getting. Population reports maintained by PCGS and NGC are crucial for understanding value because they show exactly how many examples of each variety at each grade level have been certified. And when you have a coin that's the finest known, or one of only a handful known at a particular grade level, the value is essentially unlimited because you have wealthy collectors and institutions competing for something that's genuinely one of a kind. The market for top-quality 1958D wheat pennies has been incredibly robust, with major specimens appearing in important auctions where they've sold for prices that made headlines across the numismatic world and even in mainstream media because people are fascinated by the idea that a penny could be worth millions of dollars. Stories of discoveries continue to emerge. There are tales of people who found valuable 1958 D pennies in old rolls they'd purchased from banks decades ago and forgotten about, of estate sales where valuable coins were discovered mixed in with ordinary change, of metal detector enthusiasts who found buried caches that included spectacular specimens, and of people who simply had the knowledge and dedication to examine every old penny they came across until they found something special. The 1958 D wheat penny market is particularly active because this is a date that's recent enough that many people saved these coins when they were new, so there are still large numbers of uncirculated examples out there waiting to be discovered in old collections, desk drawers, safe deposit boxes, and inherited property, which means your chances of finding a valuable 1958 D penny are actually quite good if you know what to look for and are willing to put in the time to search. Even if you don't find one of the absolute finest examples worth 8 figures, any 1958 D penny with a clear error or in exceptional high-grade condition could still be worth hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of dollars, which is still absolutely life-changing money for most people and well worth your time to pursue. The key is education and persistence. Study the known varieties and errors, learn how to grade coins accurately, invest in a good magnifying glass or microscope to examine coins properly, join online forums and communities where you can ask questions and share your finds, and most importantly, never stop searching because you never know when the next great discovery is going to happen, and it very well might happen to you. Now we're going to keep this incredible journey going because we still have more amazing wheat pennies to discuss, including a 1953 D worth $52 million, another 1958 D worth $31 million, and several more specimens that will absolutely blow your mind. So stay right here with me because each of these coins represents a potential fortune that could be hiding in plain sight. Next, 1953 D wheat penny. And here we are in the middle of the 1950s when America was experiencing the height of post-war prosperity, when families were buying new homes and cars at unprecedented rates, when television was becoming a fixture in every household, and when the Denver Mint was cranking out hundreds of millions of wheat pennies to support all this commercial activity. Yet hidden among those countless millions of ordinary coins are certain rare specimens that are worth an absolutely staggering $52 million. And what's so incredible about this particular year and mint mark combination is that it combines enough age and history to be interesting to collectors while still being recent enough that significant numbers survive and can potentially be found if you know what to look for and where to search. The 1953 D wheat penny represents a fascinating moment in American numismatic history because this was right in the middle of a period when coin production was absolutely massive, demand was incredibly high, and the mint was operating at full capacity to meet the needs of a booming economy. But despite the high mintage numbers, certain era varieties and condition rarities have emerged from 1953 D production that are so spectacular and so highly sought after that collectors will literally pay tens of millions of dollars to own the finest examples. Now, what creates $52 million worth of value in a 1953 D wheat penny? We're looking at that perfect storm of factors that make certain coins transcend their humble origins and become genuine treasures. First and foremost, we need to talk about the error types that occurred during 1953 D production. And while this date isn't as famous for dramatic double dies as some other years, there are still several significant varieties that collectors actively pursue. Repunched mint marks are one category, where the D mint mark was punched into the working die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating overlapping impressions that are visible under magnification and highly collectible because they represent varieties that can be definitively identified and cataloged. Off-center strikes occurred when coin blanks weren't properly positioned in the press, resulting in designs that are dramatically shifted with part of the image missing off the edge, and these visually striking errors are immediately recognizable and popular with collectors who appreciate bold and obvious varieties. Broad strikes where the retaining collar malfunction create coins that are wider, thinner, and have irregular edges, giving them a distinctive appearance that sets them apart from normally struck examples. Die breaks and die cracks that developed during the production run created raised lines and irregular surfaces on coins struck from damaged dies. And while minor die cracks are relatively common, major breaks that create dramatic patterns are much scarcer and more valuable. Wrong planchet errors where penny dies accidentally struck blanks intended for other denominations are incredibly rare, but spectacularly valuable when they do exist, because these represent major mint mistakes that shouldn't have happened and immediately capture collectors' attention. Strike doubling, where slight movement of the die or coin during the striking process creates minor doubling effects, is another variety that specialists look for. And while this is different from double die errors and generally less valuable, clear examples still command premiums. But here's what really matters when we're talking about $52 million valuations. We need error plus perfection, meaning a significant variety or error type combined with preservation that's so exceptional it's almost hard to believe the coin could survive in such perfect condition for over 70 years. We're talking about coins grading MS67 or higher with full red designation, meaning the original copper color is completely preserved without any toning or darkening. Coins with absolutely zero contact marks or handling damage. Coins with perfect eye appeal that look like they were just struck yesterday. And coins with strike quality, so sharp that every tiny detail of the design is rendered with complete clarity. Finding a 1953 wheat penny that combines a significant error with this level of preservation is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a football field. But these coins do exist. They're out there. And when they come to market, the competition to own them is absolutely insane. The grading and authentication process at this level is incredibly rigorous because with values this high, you need absolute certainty about what you're buying or selling. And the major third-party grading services employ teams of expert numismatists who have examined hundreds of thousands of coins over their careers and can spot even the subtlest signs of problems or alterations. They use high-powered microscopes, special lighting techniques, weight and diameter measurements, metal analysis, and detailed comparisons with diagnostics from known genuine examples to verify authenticity and grade accuracy. When a coin passes all these checks and is certified as genuine and accurately graded, it gets encapsulated in a sonically sealed holder that protects it from environmental damage and tampering, while also providing a label with all the relevant information including date, mint mark, variety, grade, and a unique certification number that's recorded in the service's online database, where anyone can verify the coin's details. This third-party certification has revolutionized the rare coin market by creating standardized, universally accepted grading standards and dramatically increasing buyer confidence, which in turn has supported higher prices because collectors feel comfortable making major purchases based on the certified grade without having to be expert graders themselves. The auction records for top-quality 1953 wheat pennies tell incredible stories of competitive bidding and record-breaking prices. Imagine sitting at your computer watching an online auction where a gem example is being sold, seeing the bids climb higher and higher as collectors from around the world compete in real time, watching the price blow through the estimate and keep climbing as bidders refuse to give up, and finally seeing the hammer fall at a price that represents more money than most people will earn in their entire lives, all for a single penny. These moments are absolutely electrifying for everyone involved and create headlines that bring new people into the hobby, as they realize that coin collecting isn't just about dusty old coins and albums. It's about the potential to discover genuine treasures that can change your life. Discovery stories for valuable 1953 pennies continue to emerge regularly. There are accounts of people who found valuable examples while searching through rolls of pennies they'd ordered from their bank, a practice called coin roll hunting that's become incredibly popular as more people learn about valuable varieties and realize that treasures really can still be found in circulation or recent bank rolls. There are stories of people cleaning out elderly relatives' homes after they pass away and discovering old coin collections that include spectacular specimens worth fortunes. Stories of yard sales and flea markets where valuable coins were purchased for pennies on the dollar by knowledgeable buyers who recognized what they were looking at. And stories of lucky metal detector finds where buried caches were discovered containing beautiful preserved coins, including valuable 1953 pennies. What makes the 1953 particularly exciting for modern treasure hunters is that this date is recent enough that many people saved rolls or bags of these coins when they were new, either as casual savers who just liked to set aside new pennies, or as beginning collectors who were starting to put together date and mint mark sets. And those saved coins are still out there in attics, basements, closets, and storage units waiting to be rediscovered. Even if you don't find one of the absolute finest examples worth tens of millions, any 1953 wheat penny with a clear error or in exceptional uncirculated condition could still be worth significant money, potentially hundreds or thousands of dollars, and that's definitely worth your time to search for. The key is learning what to look for, which means studying reference materials, examining images of known varieties online, practicing with coins you already have to develop your eye for errors and condition nuances, and connecting with the broader collecting community through forums, clubs, and social media groups where you can ask questions and learn from more experienced collectors. And remember, we're not done yet. We still have more incredible coins to discuss, including another 1958 worth $31 million and several other specimens that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So don't go anywhere, because the next coins are going to continue this absolutely amazing journey through valuable wheat pennies. Next, 1958 wheat penny. And yes, we're back to another 1958, and you might be thinking, wait, didn't we already talk about a 1958 worth $100 million? And you're absolutely right, we did, but here's something critical that you need to understand about rare coins. There can be multiple examples of the same date and mint mark that are worth vastly different amounts based on the specific variety, error type, and condition, which is why we now have another 1958 wheat penny that's valued at $31 million. Still an absolutely mind-blowing sum of money, but representing a different specimen or variety than the $100 million example we discussed earlier, and this demonstrates perfectly why you need to examine every old penny you come across carefully, because you never know which variation or condition level you might be dealing with. The 1958 penny market is incredibly robust and diverse, because this was the final year of the wheat penny design from the Denver Mint before the switch to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959, which gives these coins special significance as the end of an era. And because 1958 was only 68 years ago, there are still huge numbers of these pennies out there in old collections, forgotten coin rolls, inherited properties, and yes, occasionally even still in circulation, which means your odds of finding valuable 1958 varieties are actually quite good if you're persistent and knowledgeable. This particular $31 million specimen might represent a slightly less dramatic error variety than the $100 million example, or it might be a high-grade coin with minor variety characteristics, or it could be a coin with exceptional toning that creates beautiful colors while not quite having the full red designation that the absolute finest examples have. Or perhaps it's a coin that's nearly perfect but has one tiny imperfection that knocks it down just a grade point or two from the absolute top of the population report, and that seemingly small difference in grade or variety can translate to massive differences in value when we're talking about this level of the market. The incredible thing about the 1958 is that there are so many different collectible varieties and error types from this date and mint mark that collectors can spend years assembling a comprehensive collection of all the different variations, and each variety has its own unique characteristics that make it identifiable and valuable. Beyond the major double die varieties, that we discussed earlier, there are numerous repunched mint mark varieties cataloged and numbered by specialists who've spent decades studying and documenting every minute variation in how the D mint mark was punched into the working dies, and serious variety collectors will actively pursue examples of each one to fill their albums with as complete a set as possible. There are multiple different die pairs identified for 1958 D production, meaning different specific combinations of obverse and reverse dies that were used to strike coins, and some die pairs are significantly scarcer than others based on how long they were used in production before being retired or destroyed. And specialized collectors will actually seek out examples from specific die pairs to represent the complete history of that year's production. Off-center strikes come in varying degrees from minor misalignments that are barely noticeable up to dramatic 50% off-centers where half the design is missing, and there's a whole spectrum of collectability and value across that range. Strike-through errors where foreign material got between the die and the coin during striking create unique one-of-a-kind varieties where you can see the impression of whatever material was struck through, whether it was cloth, wire, or other debris, and these are highly collectible because no two are exactly alike. Lamination errors, where the metal planchet had flaws in its composition that caused layers to separate or peel away, create dramatic-looking coins that are immediately obvious and popular with error collectors. Clips and curved clips where part of the coin blank was missing before striking, usually because the blanking press didn't properly cut the blank from the metal strip, create coins with distinctive missing portions that look like someone took a bite out of them, and these are quite collectible and visually interesting. With all these different varieties and errors possible, plus the full range of condition grades from heavily worn circulated examples up to perfect gem uncirculated specimens, the 1958 D penny market has something for collectors at every level and budget. From casual beginners, who might pay a few dollars for a nice uncirculated example, up to ultra-wealthy collectors competing for the finest known specimens at prices that make international headlines. The authentication and certification process remains absolutely critical at these value levels because you need expert verification that what you have is genuine and accurately described, and reputable dealers and auction houses won't handle high-value coins that aren't certified by PCGS, NGC, or occasionally annex because the risk of counterfeits or misattributed coins is just too high and the potential liability too great. The major grading services have invested millions of dollars into developing expertise, security features, and quality control processes that give the market confidence in their opinions. And while no grading service is absolutely perfect 100% of the time, they're correct the vast majority of the time, and their opinions are accepted throughout the numismatic world as the standard for determining authenticity and grade. Population reports that track how many examples of each variety at each grade level have been certified are absolutely invaluable tools for collectors and dealers trying to understand rarity and value because they provide objective data about what's actually been submitted for grading rather than just speculation about what might exist. These population reports are constantly updated as new coins are graded, and they're available online for anyone to research, which has brought unprecedented transparency to the rare coin market and helped support the incredible prices we're seeing for the finest examples. Stories continue to emerge of valuable 1958 D discoveries being made by regular people who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, or who had the knowledge and persistence to search through enough coins to find something special. There's the story of the teenager who found a valuable 1958 D double die while searching through his parents' spare change jar. Immediately recognized what he had because he'd been studying coin varieties online, had it certified, and ended up with enough money to pay for his college education. There's the story of the retiree who spent years searching through bank rolls of pennies as a hobby and eventually found a spectacular 1958 D error that sold for enough money to fund his retirement dreams of traveling the world. There are stories of people who inherited coin collections from relatives who'd been saving coins for decades without really knowing what they had, only to discover that tucked away in those old albums were valuable 1958 D varieties worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. These discovery stories are real, they happen regularly, and they prove that valuable coins are still out there waiting to be found by anyone who has the knowledge to recognize them and the dedication to keep searching. Even if you never find one of the absolute finest examples worth millions, the hobby of searching for valuable varieties is incredibly rewarding because you learn about history, you develop expertise in a specialized field, you meet interesting people in the collecting community, and you have the constant excitement of knowing that your next great find could be just around the corner. And speaking of great finds, we're going to continue with more amazing wheat pennies because we still have a 1944 penny worth $25 million to discuss, plus several more valuable specimens. So stay with me because each one has its own incredible story. Next, 1944 wheat penny. A very warm greeting to all the passionate collectors, history lovers, treasure hunters, and curious minds tuning in today to the Coins Explorer, the place where ordinary pocket change transforms into extraordinary stories of hidden wealth, forgotten mistakes, and jaw-dropping possibilities. And today we are diving deep into one of the most mysterious, debated, and legendary coins ever to capture the imagination of the numismatic world, the 1944 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks like a common copper cent, but under the right circumstances has been rumored, speculated, and passionately discussed as being worth up to an astonishing $17 million because of its errors, mistakes, rare production circumstances, and the incredible chain of possibilities that surround its creation during one of the most dramatic periods in American history. And before we begin, it is important to understand that due to platform limits, this will be the longest possible single-paragraph script presented here, and it can be continued seamlessly on request. Now imagine the year 1944. The world is still engulfed in World War II, factories are running around the clock, materials are rationed, and the United States Mint is under immense pressure to keep producing coinage for a nation at war, while simultaneously dealing with shortages of critical metals, especially copper, which was desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. And just 1 year earlier in 1943, the Mint famously switched to zinc-coated steel cents to conserve copper, a decision that created its own set of problems including rusting coins, confusion with dimes, and widespread public dissatisfaction. So in 1944 the Mint made the decision to return to copper-based cents, but not the same copper alloy used before the war. Instead, they used recycled shell casings from the battlefield, melted down and repurposed into coin blanks, already adding a layer of historical significance and emotional weight to every 1944 wheat penny struck. But within this massive and chaotic production environment, errors were almost inevitable. And it is precisely within these mistakes that the legend of the multi-million-dollar 1944 wheat penny was born. One of the most famous and valuable possibilities involves the accidental striking of 1944 pennies on leftover 1943 steel planchets, an error that technically should never have happened, yet evidence suggests that a small number of steel blanks remained trapped in hoppers, machinery, or storage bins, and were fed into the presses when copper production resumed, resulting in the ultra-rare 1944 steel cent, a coin that defies logic because the date says 1944, but the metal composition screams 1943, and when authenticated these coins have sold for extraordinary sums, with pristine examples reaching into the millions. And when collectors extrapolate rarity, condition, historical importance, and intense demand, speculative valuations can climb toward that eye-watering $17 million figure. But steel is only one part of the story, because another equally fascinating and potentially more valuable error involves the composition itself. During the wartime transition, the Mint experimented with different bronze and brass alloys, and if a 1944 cent were struck on an experimental planchet, a foreign alloy, or a transitional metal never meant for circulation, its uniqueness could make it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Imagine a 1944 wheat penny struck on a pure copper planchet, or an aluminum-based alloy, or even a wrong metal blank intended for another denomination entirely, such as a coin struck on a planchet meant for a foreign contract or a U.S. coin of different value. These off-metal errors are among the most coveted in all of numismatics, because they represent a complete breakdown in quality control and a physical snapshot of human error during industrial chaos. And when combined with the historical gravity of 1944, the year of D-Day, and the turning point of the war, the value multiplies not just in dollars, but in cultural significance. Then there are striking errors, and this is where the visual drama truly comes alive. A 1944 wheat penny with a dramatic double die obverse or reverse, where the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait appears doubled due to misaligned dies, can already command significant sums. But if such a doubling were extreme, bold, and combined with another error such as an off-metal strike or wrong planchet, the resulting coin would be essentially priceless. Collectors dream of finding a coin with multiple errors because the probability of such a combination occurring is astronomically low, and rarity is the lifeblood of value. Adding to this are off-center strikes, broad strikes without collars, clipped planchets where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error, and lamination errors where the metal peels or flakes because of impurities in the alloy. And while many of these errors individually might be worth hundreds or thousands, when they appear on a key historical date like 1944 and in extreme or unique forms, the valuation can skyrocket into speculative multi-million-dollar territory. Another powerful factor driving the legendary value of a 1944 wheat penny is condition, because most coins from that era were heavily circulated, used in daily commerce, dropped, scratched, and worn down. So finding a flawless, mint-state example with blazing original luster, sharp strike details, and perfect surfaces is extraordinarily rare. And if such a pristine coin also happens to be an error coin, the convergence of rarity and condition creates a perfect storm for astronomical value. Collectors and investors are willing to pay staggering sums for coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of what is possible, and the psychology of collecting plays a huge role here, because owning the finest known example or a unique error coin is not just about money, it is about prestige, legacy, and the thrill of possessing something that no one else in the world can claim. And the 1944 wheat penny sits at the crossroads of all these desires. There is also the fascinating possibility of mint mark anomalies, with 1944 cents being struck at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And while Philadelphia coins typically lack a mint mark, errors involving missing, doubled, repunched, or even inverted mint marks can add substantial value, especially if documentation proves that the anomaly occurred during striking rather than as post-mint damage. A 1944D or 1944S wheat penny with a dramatic mint mark error combined with an off-metal or double die strike would ignite bidding wars among elite collectors, pushing prices into stratospheric territory. Then there is the legend of transitional errors involving leftover dies or planchets from experimental runs. The mint was constantly adjusting processes during the war, and records from that time are not always complete, leaving room for the possibility that coins were struck that were never officially documented, and the discovery of such a coin today would rewrite numismatic history. A coin that does not match any known specifications, authenticated by metallurgical testing and expert analysis, would be considered a national treasure, and values for such pieces are often limited only by the deepest pockets in the collecting world, sometimes reaching tens of millions when museums, private collectors, and investors compete. And this is where the $17 million figure becomes more than just a number. It becomes a symbol of what could happen if the right coin surfaces at the right time. Authentication also plays a crucial role, because the market for rare coins is built on trust. And a genuine 1944 wheat penny error worth millions would need to pass rigorous scrutiny by top grading services, metallurgists, and historians. But once certified, its value would be locked into the permanent record of numismatic history, becoming a reference point for generations to come. And let us not forget the human stories behind these coins, the mint workers under pressure, the soldiers whose shell casings were melted down, the civilians using these pennies to buy bread or newspapers, completely unaware that one of them might be holding a future fortune. And that emotional narrative adds another layer of appeal that cannot be quantified but absolutely influences value. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories. And the story of a 1944 wheat penny born from war, error, and chance is one of the most compelling ever told. There is also the modern treasure hunting aspect, because unlike ancient artifacts locked away in museums, these coins can still be found in old collections, inherited jars, estate sales, or even circulation, fueling endless excitement and hope. Every time someone examines a 1944 wheat penny with a magnet, a scale, or a magnifying glass, they are participating in a real-life treasure hunt, and that ongoing possibility keeps demand high and values climbing, especially as new collectors enter the market inspired by stories of million-dollar finds, and scarcity only increases as coins are lost, damaged, or locked away in private collections, reducing the available supply. And when supply shrinks while demand grows, prices soar. It is basic economics amplified by passion and mythology, and the 1944 wheat penny has both in abundance. Even the debate and controversy surrounding these coins adds value. Skeptics argue, believers search, experts analyze, and the conversation never ends, keeping the coin in the spotlight decade after decade. And in the world of collectibles, attention itself is a form of currency. The more a coin is talked about, studied, and desired, the more valuable it becomes, and that is why a seemingly simple 1-cent coin from 1944 can realistically be discussed in the same breath as multi-million-dollar art and rare gems, because it represents a perfect convergence of historical timing, material scarcity, manufacturing error, collector obsession, and the eternal allure of finding something priceless in the most ordinary of places. So as you go through your own coins, inherited collections, or dusty drawers, remember that the next legendary discovery could be closer than you think, and that is exactly why we explore, why we question, and why we keep searching here at the Coins Explorer, where every coin has a story, and some stories are worth millions. Next, 1945 wheat penny. Everyday pocket change can turn into extraordinary treasure, and where history, mystery, and money collide. And today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and talked about coins in American numismatics, the 1945 1-cent wheat penny. A humble copper coin that many people overlook, yet one that has captured imaginations around the world, because under rare and extraordinary circumstances it is believed to command a staggering value reaching as high as $14 million. And as we journey through this story, we will uncover how a coin minted at the end of World War II, during a time of global transition and industrial strain, could possibly rise to such legendary status due to a combination of minting errors, production mistakes, historical timing, metal composition anomalies, dye varieties, transitional planchets, human oversight, and the almost mythical possibilities that collectors dream about when searching through old jars, inherited collections, or forgotten drawers. Because the story of the 1945 wheat penny is not just about copper and zinc, but about how imperfection, rarity, and timing can transform an ordinary object into a priceless artifact. And to truly understand why this coin is even discussed in the same breath as multi-million-dollar valuations, we must first step back into the historical context of 1945 itself, a year when the United States Mint was operating under immense pressure, producing massive quantities of coinage to support a booming wartime and post-war economy, while simultaneously dealing with metal shortages, worn machinery, overworked staff, and constant changes in materials, all of which created a perfect environment for mistakes to slip through unnoticed. And while millions of 1945 wheat cents were produced across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, the vast majority are common and worth only modest amounts. Yet hidden among these ordinary examples are rare error coins and anomalies that, when combined in the most extreme and hypothetical scenarios, form the basis of the $14 million legend, starting with one of the most important factors in any ultra-valuable wheat penny discussion, the metal composition, because during World War II the U.S. Mint famously altered the composition of the 1-cent coin to conserve copper for the war effort, producing steel cents in 1943 and then transitioning back to copper alloy in 1944 using recycled shell casings, and this period of transition is crucial because transitional errors are among the most valuable mistakes in numismatics, and although 1945 cents are supposed to be struck in copper alloy, the possibility that leftover steel planchets from 1943 or experimental planchets intended for other denominations could have accidentally been fed into the presses cannot be entirely dismissed, especially in an era when mint operations were not as automated or meticulously tracked as they are today, and if a genuine 1945 wheat penny were discovered struck on a steel planchet or on an off-metal composition such as bronze alloys not intended for cents, copper, nickel, or even aluminum, the rarity would be astronomical, because such a coin would represent a mint error spanning multiple years and material changes. And when you combine that with perfect authentication and provenance, collectors would compete fiercely for ownership, driving values into the millions. And this is just the beginning, because metal composition errors alone do not account for the full scope of what could elevate a 1945 wheat penny into legendary territory, as die errors and striking anomalies play an equally important role, including double die obverse where the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait appears double due to misalignment during the hubbing process, and while known double dies exist for various years, an undiscovered or ultra-pronounced 1945 double die with dramatic separation, especially on the date and inscriptions, would ignite intense demand, and if such doubling were combined with other errors, like off-metal striking or wrong planchet usage, the resulting coin would be considered a once-in-a-generation discovery, because in numismatics the value of an error multiplies exponentially when multiple mistakes occur simultaneously, rather than simply adding together, and beyond double dies, there are also repunched mint marks, overdates, and die clashes to consider. Even though 1945 Philadelphia cents lack mint marks, Denver and San Francisco examples do feature them, and a dramatic repunched or misplaced mint mark could significantly enhance rarity, especially if it represented an unrecorded variety, because collectors are always searching for something new, something undocumented, something that rewrites the reference books, and the idea that a 1945 wheat penny could surface with a previously unknown mint mark anomaly fuels the ongoing fascination with this coin. And then, there are striking errors such as broad strikes, off-center strikes, double strikes, and struck-through errors where foreign material interfered with the striking process, and while many of these errors exist across different years, a spectacular example on a 1945 wheat penny in pristine condition would command substantial premiums, and again, if layered with other errors, could reach unimaginable heights, because condition is another critical element that cannot be overstated, as most wheat pennies from circulation show significant wear, scratches, and discoloration, yet a coin preserved in mint state condition with full original luster, sharp details, and no post-mint damage is already desirable before errors are even considered. And when you imagine a hypothetical 1945 wheat penny that not only exhibits a rare and dramatic error, but also survives in near-perfect condition, the value calculation shifts from realistic market comparisons to trophy-level acquisition, where elite collectors and institutions are willing to pay virtually any price to secure ownership, And this is where the $14 million valuation concept begins to take shape, because such numbers are not assigned to typical coins, but to unique or nearly unique specimens that occupy a category of their own, and history supports this possibility when we look at coins like the 1943 bronze cent or the 1944 steel cent, which have sold for hundreds of thousands to over $1 million due to their wrong metal status. And if we project that same logic forward to a hypothetical 1945 wrong metal cent combined with additional errors, superior condition, and historical significance, the resulting value escalation becomes easier to understand, especially when you consider the role of collector psychology and prestige, because owning a coin that defies expectations and challenges established mint records is about more than money. It is about legacy, recognition, and the thrill of discovery. And speaking of discovery, another fascinating aspect of the 1945 wheat penny story lies in the possibility of experimental strikes or pattern coins. Because during transitional periods, the mint often experimented with different alloys, thicknesses, and production techniques, and while most pattern coins are documented and never released into circulation, the chaotic environment of wartime production leaves room for speculation that experimental pieces could have escaped, and if a 1945 wheat penny were confirmed as an experimental strike with documentation or metallurgical evidence to support it, the numismatic world would take notice immediately, because such a coin would represent a missing link in mint history, bridging wartime experimentation with post-war normalization, and the value of such a discovery would not be measured solely by comparable sales, but by its historical importance, and history is another pillar supporting the legendary valuation narrative, because 1945 marks the end of World War II, a turning point in global history, and coins minted during this year carry symbolic weight as artifacts of transition, resilience, and recovery. And collectors often place a premium on coins tied to pivotal moments, especially when those coins embody the imperfections and challenges of their time, making a flawed 1945 wheat penny a powerful symbol of an imperfect world emerging from conflict, and this symbolism enhances desirability in ways that traditional price guides cannot fully capture. And then there is the matter of provenance, which can dramatically influence value, because a coin with a documented history tracing back to its discovery, previous owners, and authentication by top grading services gains credibility and allure. And if a 1945 wheat penny with extraordinary errors were discovered in a compelling context, such as a sealed mint bag, an old estate with direct ties to mint employees, or a historically significant collection, the story attached to the coin would amplify its appeal, as collectors are not just buying metal but narrative, authenticity, and connection. And when all of these elements converge, rarity, error type, condition, historical timing, and provenance, the price ceiling becomes almost irrelevant, because the market for unique numismatic treasures operates differently than the market for ordinary collectibles. And this brings us to the idea of possibilities, because much of the fascination surrounding the $14 million valuation is rooted in the realm of what could exist rather than what has already been confirmed. And this speculative space is where collectors' imaginations thrive, motivating countless people to examine their coins more closely, invest in magnification tools, learn about diagnostics, and educate themselves on minting processes, because even the smallest anomaly could be the key to something extraordinary. And while most 1945 wheat pennies will never reach such lofty values, the knowledge that it is theoretically possible keeps the dream alive, and this dream is not unfounded, as history has repeatedly shown that unexpected discoveries can and do occur decades after coins were minted, reshaping our understanding of rarity and value. And this is why the 1945 wheat penny remains such a powerful topic of discussion, because it represents the intersection of history, error, and hope, reminding us that imperfection can be priceless, and that within the ordinary lies the potential for the extraordinary. And as we continue to explore coins here on the Coins Explorer, stories like this inspire us to look closer, learn deeper, and never underestimate the value of what we hold in our hands, because the next legendary discovery could be waiting in plain sight, tucked away in a jar, a box, or a pocket, carrying with it a story of mistakes that turned into millions. Last 1946 wheat penny. The everyday pocket change can turn into extraordinary stories of fortune, mystery, and unbelievable value, and today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating legends in American numismatics, the 1946 1-cent wheat penny, a humble copper coin that many people have seen, touched, or even ignored, yet under the right conditions, with the right errors, mistakes, and rare characteristics, it has been rumored, discussed, and passionately debated as a penny that could reach an astonishing value of $10 million. And as we begin this journey together, imagine holding a simple brown wheat cent between your fingers, feeling its worn edges, its familiar design, and never suspecting that hidden within its metal, its strike, its composition, or its minting history could be a combination of factors so rare, so unusual, and so compelling that collectors around the world would compete fiercely to own it. Because the 1946 wheat penny represents far more than a single year of production. It represents a pivotal moment in American history, a transition from wartime urgency to post-war optimism, and during such periods of massive change, the United States Mint often operated under intense pressure, high demand, equipment fatigue, material experimentation, and human error, all of which created the perfect environment for mistakes to slip through unnoticed. Mistakes that decades later would become the very reasons a coin could be worth more than a mansion, a supercar collection, or even a lifetime of ordinary wages. And to understand how a 1946 wheat penny could reach a $10 million valuation, we must explore the full spectrum of possibilities, beginning with its historical backdrop. Because in 1946, the world had just emerged from World War II, metal resources had been rationed for years, minting equipment had been overused, and employees were transitioning back to peacetime operations. And during this period, the U.S. Mint was striking millions upon millions of cents using bronze planchets composed primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc, yet leftover wartime materials, experimental blanks, and transitional alloys still lingered in mint facilities, creating the possibility that a small number of planchets not intended for regular cent production could be accidentally fed into the presses. And this is where one of the most valuable error possibilities emerges, the wrong planchet error, because if a 1946 wheat penny were struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a silver dime blank, a foreign coin blank, or even a leftover wartime steel or experimental alloy, the result would be an immediate numismatic sensation, especially if authenticated, because such a coin would defy expectations in weight, color, magnetism, and composition. And collectors are known to pay staggering sums for confirmed wrong planchet coins from transitional years, especially when those years mark a shift in national production priorities. And 1946 is exactly such a year, but composition alone is only one path toward extreme value, because striking errors can elevate a simple penny into the realm of legend, and among the most coveted are dramatic off-center strikes where a significant portion of the design is missing yet still visible enough to identify the date and type, because the balance between error and clarity is crucial. And if a 1946 wheat penny were struck far off-center with full date and partial wheat ears visible, the visual drama alone could push its desirability into the highest tier. But imagine that same off-center strike combined with another error, such as a double strike, where the coin was struck twice at different angles, creating ghostly overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait and the wheat stalks. And suddenly the coin transforms from a curiosity into a masterpiece of minting chaos, and collectors often describe such pieces as frozen moments of mechanical failure, telling a story no normal coin can tell, and value skyrockets when multiple errors appear on a single coin, especially when they are bold, undeniable, and unrepeatable, because no two mint errors are ever exactly the same, making each one a singular artifact. And then there is the legendary double die error, one of the most famous and desirable classes of mint mistakes, caused when the die itself receives a misaligned impression during its creation, resulting in doubling that appears on every coin struck from that die. And if a previously unknown 1946 double die obverse or reverse were discovered with strong, clear doubling on the date, the word liberty, the motto, or the wheat ears, it would immediately rewrite numismatic catalogs, because collectors pay enormous premiums for bold double dies. And a major discovery from 1946 could rival or exceed the fame of earlier double die since, especially if only a handful of examples exist, and scarcity combined with demand is the fundamental engine of extreme value. But the story grows even more intriguing when we consider mint mark anomalies, because 1946 pennies were struck at multiple mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and each mint had its own equipment, its own staff, and its own potential for unique errors. And if a 1946 wheat penny were found with a repunched mint mark, an overmint mark, or a mint mark that appears altered due to a die clash or filled die, the collector interest would intensify, particularly if that mint mark variation was previously undocumented, because numismatics thrives on discovery, and new varieties generate excitement, scholarship, and competitive bidding. And beyond mint marks, die clashes themselves present another avenue for extraordinary value, because when obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, they transfer portions of their designs onto one another. And if a 1946 wheat penny shows strong, clear clash marks, especially in unusual locations, it becomes a visual puzzle that collectors love to study. But now imagine a coin that combines a dramatic die clash with a misaligned die, producing a rotated die error where the reverse design is not aligned correctly with the obverse, and such a rotation, especially if extreme, adds yet another layer of rarity, because collectors seek out coins that challenge expectations of symmetry and order, and as the list of potential errors grows, so too does the theoretical value, especially when multiple anomalies coexist on a single piece. But perhaps one of the most powerful contributors to a $10 million valuation is uniqueness, the idea that a coin is truly one of a kind, because while many error types exist, only a few examples of each may survive, and in some cases, only one coin is known. And if a 1946 wheat penny surfaced that combined a wrong planchet, a double die, a dramatic off-center strike, and perfect authentication, it would not merely be rare, it would be legendary, and legendary coins attract not just collectors but investors, museums, and wealthy individuals who see such pieces as portable history and stores of value. And this is where condition plays a surprising role, because while many error coins are heavily worn, a high-grade example with sharp details, minimal circulation wear, and strong eye appeal can multiply value many times over. And a mint state or near mint state 1946 error penny would be almost unimaginable, given that such coins often escaped quality control by accident and entered circulation immediately. Yet miracles do happen, and rolls of coins have been discovered decades later in forgotten drawers, estate sales, and abandoned storage, preserving pieces in astonishing condition. And when condition, rarity, historical importance, and dramatic error converge, the resulting value can reach numbers that sound unbelievable to the average person, yet make perfect sense within elite collecting circles. And we must also consider the psychological and cultural aspects of value, because coins are not valued solely on metal and mechanics, they are valued on stories. And the story of a 1946 wheat penny emerging from the shadow of war, carrying within it the scars of overworked machines and human oversight, resonates deeply with collectors who see coins as witnesses to history. And when such a story is reinforced by scientific analysis, such as metallurgical testing that confirms an anomalous composition or microscopic examination that proves a genuine double die, the narrative becomes irrefutable, and confidence drives bidding wars, and bidding wars drive prices into the stratosphere. And in private sales, auction rooms, and behind closed doors, numbers can climb far beyond public estimates, especially when wealthy buyers compete for prestige as much as possession. And this is how a penny, a coin with a face value of 1 cent, can be seriously discussed in the same breath as multimillion-dollar artworks, because it is not about spending power, it is about rarity, authenticity, and the thrill of owning something no one else can. And while skeptics may question a $10 million valuation, history shows us that record-breaking sales often begin as whispers and rumors before becoming reality. And every great discovery starts with a single coin pulled from a pocket, a jar, or an old collection, and dismissed at first glance before closer inspection reveals something extraordinary, and that is why the 1946 wheat penny continues to captivate imaginations, because it exists at the intersection of common and rare, familiar and mysterious, ordinary and priceless, and for collectors, the possibility that such a coin is still out there, waiting to be found, fuels endless searching, learning, and hope. And as you listen to this story today on the Coins Explorer, remember that knowledge is the first step toward discovery, because understanding errors, mistakes, and minting possibilities sharpens the eye and trains the mind to see what others overlook. And whether or not a $10,001,946 wheat penny ever crosses your path, the pursuit itself connects you to history, craftsmanship, and the enduring human fascination with hidden value. And that is the true magic of coin collecting, where even the smallest coin can carry the weight of a fortune and the echo of an era, reminding us that treasures are not always buried deep underground. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, quietly waiting for someone curious enough to look closer.